Welcome back, Unstoppable fans. I'm Richie Wright here in the studio today. Sitting next to me is my co-anchor, Savannah Gajda. We have a lot of amazing triumphs on the field, court, and beyond to break down for you.
We are back and better than ever. We've got a thrilling episode for all you avid sports fans today. We will begin our spring sports rundown with Mount Vernon's finest, GW baseball and softball, followed by a one-time only, exclusive, unstoppable interview with five-time NBA MVP Michael Jordan. April Fools! I wish. I wonder if anyone in the control room fell for that. But we do have Alex Ashley joining us later on, who is second to none with his Vamps. So without further ado, let's get this show started.
The Buff and Blue are on a two-game winning streak following their most recent victory against UMES. Not only did they win 8-3 while playing in my hometown of Salisbury, Maryland, but this victory served as the first road win for GW this entire season. Despite being a strong team during their home games, where they are 11-3, GW has an underwhelming record on the road of 1-10. Put together, that indicates an overall record of 12-13, which raises questions about what kind of talent this squad has as it reaches the midway point of the season. GW began its season with 6 consecutive losses, most of which were blowouts. To look at it in terms of runs scored versus runs scored on them, GW earned 14 runs compared to 61 runs against them. That's not the way any team wants to open its season. But since then, GW has managed to somewhat flip the script, winning 12 of the next 19. Across that span, this team also narrowed the ratio of runs scored versus runs scored on them. Now it stands at 144 GW runs in comparison to 159 runs scored by opponents. It's not quite where they'd like to be, but it's immensely better than where GW was back in February. Prior to UMES, GW had a come-from-behind win against Georgetown. As they entered the bottom of the fifth, Georgetown led 7-1. Redshirt sophomore Joe Bucconi initiated the comeback with a run off his double. Shortly after, Bucconi made it home to add another run to GW's score off of a single by senior Cade Fergus. By the end of the game, the Buff and Blue had earned 10 unanswered runs to win it 11-7. As GW looks to build off its momentum from its first road win, the team will need to focus on limiting its errors. When they have 2 or more errors than their opponent, GW struggles more and often loses. This issue has persisted since their dismal start to the season. In order for them to achieve more success, they need to continue preventing errors to give them better chances of winning.
Spring has sprung, and so has the women's softball team. The team began the season with a 3-game losing streak to tough competition, including UNC, South Carolina, and UVA. But with some extra grit and the luck of the cherry blossoms, the team was able to turn their fate around to an 11-game win streak. Sophomore Alexa Williams has been a standout for the team, building off of last year's A10 All-Rookie team debut. Williams boasts 25 runs and 2 A10 Player of the Week honors so far this season. Sierra Lange also received 2 A10 Pitcher of the Week honors, and she leads the Colonials with 26 runs. The team has about a week to recover and get back into prime shape before they face Hampton on April 6th, and several A10 opponents after that. The Colonials have already defeated 3 A10 foes, among them Fordham, St. Joseph's, and St. Bonaventure. They are standing at 9-0 at the top of the conference as the only undefeated team, with the rest of the competition not even close. St. Joseph stands in second place in the A10 with a conference record of 5-3, but the Hawks were shut out twice by the Colonials. With the way things are going right now, it could be safe to predict a three-peat for our defending A10 champions. Off the mound, the team has more to be proud of, as GW softball alumnus Alana Myers-Taylor was chosen as this year's commencement speaker. Myers-Taylor is the most decorated black athlete in Winter Olympic history and Team USA's most decorated Olympic bobsledder. Myers-Taylor was the first GW softball team's recruit, and she led the program in almost every offensive category before graduating. She was inducted into the GW Hall of Fame for athletics in 2014, and her number 24 was retired.
The GW gymnastics team was crowned East Atlantic Gymnastics League champions for the 3rd time since joining the conference in 2004. Their previous victories came in 2015 and 2017, but GW's winning score of 196.325 marks a new personal best for this program. GW's first place finish among the 8 schools competing came from event scores of 49.075 on the vault and bars, 48.9 on beam, and 49.275 on floor. Standouts from the league included freshman Rachel Katz, sophomores Annalise Silverman and Kendall Whitman, and grad student Deha Chambliss. On vault, Katz matched her career high score of 9.85. She later received the same score on bars, except this performance signaled a personal best for that event. Whitman posted a 9.875 on the floor, followed by a score of 9.85 on vault. Silverman and Chambliss earned 9.85s on the beam. Later in the competition, Chambliss delivered an impressive 9.95 and 9.875 on the floor and vault, respectively. It should not come as a major surprise that GW shone under the spotlight in this league championship. In their previous 4 meets, they boasted scores of 195.575 or higher, all hints at the coming success. Now this squad turns its attention to the NCAA regionals, where Chambliss and Whitman were selected to compete as individuals. Chambliss was named East Atlantic Gymnasts League Gymnast of the Year and will compete in the all-around. As for Whitman, she will participate on the floor, where she has scored 9.875 or higher in 8 of her 13 performances this season. Given their tremendous success all year, it's sure to be an exciting time at the NCAA regionals.
The GW men's basketball team secured the 7th seed in the A10 championship, and fans had high hopes for the team's appearance at Capital One Arena. But the team was upset on the second day of the A10 championship by 10th seed UMass. The Colonials ended their season with a 12-18 record overall and an 8-9 record in A10 play. James Bishop finished as the team's leading scorer with 502 points, followed by Joe Bamazile with 488 points, a mere 14 points behind Bishop, and Brayon Freeman in a humble 3rd place spot with 308 points. Ricky Lindo Jr. gracefully led the team with 211 rebounds, and Hunter Dean was behind him with 159 rebounds. But it's uncertain if any of these players will remain with the Colonials next season. On March 14th, Director of Athletics Tanya Vogel announced that Coach Damian Christian and his entire coaching staff would not be returning next season. Christian still had 1 year left in his contract, but he departs from the program with a 29-50 record over 3 seasons. Vogel says this decision was, quote, based on performance on the court, end quote. The athletics department admits that they strive to bring the GW men's basketball program back to the national stage. Since this announcement, Joe Bamazile, Brayon Freeman, and Ricky Lindo Jr. all entered the transfer portal, but it's been rumored that they may be willing to stick around in Foggy Bottom. Sources say University of Miami's associate head coach Chris Caputo is finalizing a deal to take over this program as our new head coach. One of Caputo's first tasks upon arriving in Foggy Bottom will be to convince Bamazile, Freeman, and Lindo Jr. to stay with GW. We have got Alex Ashley with us today to talk about GW's future in the A10 and more coaching news. Alex, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us, what happened with GW this season?
Well, it was definitely a bounce-back season. We placed 7th in the A10, which was the highest finish since 2016, but the end of the tournament was just a little bit disappointing. The GW went into that game expecting to beat UMass. We had beaten them 2 times this year, but the defense turned out to be the factor, and GW also had 18 turnovers in that game, which really hurt them in the end.
Yeah, Sam and I were there. It was pretty brutal to watch, you guys. It was like a deja vu of when they lost to Fordham 2 years ago back in Barclays Center, and it was just really awful to watch. They did not have it together. The ball handling was atrocious, but we've got a new coach coming up, right? Tell us more about that.
We do. Chris Caputo in Miami has done some great things there. He's been with Jim Larenga for 19 years, including his Final Four run with George Mason right into the DMV area. And Miami themselves is coming off of an Elite 8 run as a 10 seed in this tournament. And he's a defensive head coach. So we're hoping that when he gets to GW, he can turn around our defense, which ranked middle of the A10 this year. And so I think there are good things coming ahead, especially he's a great recruiter. He has 2 recruiting classes of all top 15 prospects in 2 consecutive years in Miami, and he did that in 2016 and 17. So we're hoping that those new recruits, especially those transfers leaving GW, might have an incentive to stay.
Yeah, well, his first task is going to be to convince Joe, Ricky, and Brayon to stay at GW. But what do you guys think went into the decision to fire Jamie? And he still had a year left on his contract. And like you said, he managed to make us a 7th seed this year. So we're slowly but surely showing signs of improvement.
I think so, but like the athletic director said, it's the performance on the court that made the decision. And although a 7th place finish wasn't horrible, it was definitely not where the program wants to be at and has been at before, coming off that NIT championship in 2016, a tournament berth in 2014. And so I think overall there's a standard that they want to reach that's just a little bit higher. So hopefully bringing in someone, especially from a Power 5 conference, will be the way to do that and put GW back into a national stage again.
So when you're looking at Coach Caputo and seeing how he took Miami this year's March Madness to the Elite 8, and GW's trajectory's kind of been improving the past few seasons, do you think it's going to be they keep going up the next season, or is it going to be an awkward transition year because new coach, new adjustments for the team, especially for defense? Any takes on that?
I think definitely for the defense as well as just the transfers. I mean, those 3 players were pretty much the bedrock of the team this year. Joe Bamasiel, the leading scorer, and he's transferring again. He transferred from Virginia Tech last year, transferring again from GW this year. And so that constant turnover rate of players is going to be difficult to get a team that bonds day one. But I think after kind of working in the new system where he plays a really fast-paced defense with especially focus on traps and corners, things like that, I think once he gets his way sorted out and gets that into the new players, once that team gels, it really could be something.
Alex, tell us about the A10 next year and what changes are coming.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest change is going to be Loyola Chicago moving from the Missouri Valley Conference into the A10. Loyola Chicago has had some big national success in the past 4 years, including a Final Four run in 2018 and a Sweet 16 just last year. They made the NCAA tournament this year, but suffered a first-round exit to Ohio State. But they definitely just bring a high level of talent and a large level of competitiveness to the A10 to rival those top teams of Dayton, VCU, St. Bonaventure, all of those types.
So when you're looking at that kind of competition, usually the competition helps others in the conference improve their level as well. Do you see that happening with GW with a big competitor like Loyola Chicago entering the A10?
Definitely, and I think a program that has had continued national success really brings up the level of competition in the league and helps challenge some of those other teams that have been towards the top for a while. I think it'll be really interesting to see how they shake up the rankings in the A10, especially with that top teams like Davidson and Dayton after this season.
I gotta say, guys, I'm really excited for Loyola Chicago. One of my best friends goes there. Shout out Monica. And I had the chance to watch them play courtside back in November, and they are such an elite team. I mean, the NCAA March Madness appearances, it's no shock to me that they make it that far. Lucas Williamson is one of their best players, and he is just unstoppable on the court, no pun intended at all. But yeah, I think that bringing them to the A10 is going to bring a lot more exposure to our conference, because people think that all the schools in the A10 are non-sport schools or small programs, but I think that this will really show people we have some major talent in this conference.
And of course, how can we forget Sister Jean? Very excited for her to be joining the A10, maybe see her courtside perhaps.
Yeah, I think it'll take a couple of years, but we have so much young talent on the team, and Brayon and Joe, I mean, they could really do big things in the next 2-3 years, so we'll see where this new coach takes us. Alex, Thank you so much for joining us today.
The GW women's basketball team ended their season with a record of 13-18, which included a 4-11 record in A10 conference play. These numbers reflect what was, at best, a shaky season under first year of Coach Caroline McCombs. But despite finishing under 500, this team played tough and showcased their talent, especially in the A10 championships. GW put together an impressive run at the tournament that saw them take down St. Bonaventure in the opening round 54-49. Graduate student Kiara Frames and redshirt junior Mayoa Taiwo led the offense with a combined 31 points, which helped them come back from a 23-18 deficit at the half. On defense, GW shut down the Bonnies when they needed it most, giving up only 8 points in the fourth quarter. In the second round, GW got their revenge against LaSalle with a 64-54 victory. This marked a rematch from just 6 days earlier, where GW fell to them during their final game of the regular season. One of the biggest differences from this meeting? GW's offense was on fire the moment the first quarter started, and they did not let up until the clock expired. The team made 50% of its field goals and over 70% of its three-point field goals. Meanwhile, the defense held LaSalle to 32% shooting from the field. A tight quarterfinal contest versus VCU ended GW's A-10 run with a final score of 55-47. There were several lead changes, including a 42-40 lead by GW with only a few minutes left in the game. Junior Seslani Loreno earned 15 points and Frames put up 11. Yet the offense couldn't quite match the experience of number 4 seed VCU, and hopes of another major upset ended here. Despite this result, the women's team put together a great run in the championship that will certainly inspire them heading into this offseason.
Men's golf did not see much success in Southern Pines, North Carolina, where they competed at the Ross Collegiate Classic and the Forest Creek Invitational. They finished 45 over par with a score of 909, placing 14th out of 17. Standouts include Hugo Rebu, who finished 39th overall with a 10 over par 226 score, with rounds of 71, 77, and 78. Junior Jacob Harinda finished 44th overall with an 11 over par 227 score, scoring rounds of 78, 72, and 77. The next weekend, the team finished 8th out of 11, once again third from the bottom of the rankings. The tournament was shortened to 2 rounds of play as a result of inclement weather. This time, it was Arav Patel leading the team with a 4 over par 148 score for rounds of 75 and 73. Patel tied for 18th overall. Rebu and Cliff Thompson tied for 22nd overall with 5 over par 149s. Harinda also found himself on the leadership board again, tying for 28th with a 6 over par 150 score with 75 points per round. The team will travel to DuPont, Washington for the Red Hawk Invitational. For all you DC locals, that's Washington State, not DuPont Circle. They will also have another chance to improve at the Wofford Invitational in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Their final tournament will be the Atlantic 10 Championship from April 9th to May 1st, where the team will fly down to Orlando, Florida for competition. We wish our golfers the best of luck in their remaining competition this season, and we hope that a successful A-10 Championship in Orlando will allow them some celebrations at Disney World.
Coming off their triumphant performance at the A-10 Championship, the men's swimming and diving teams had some of their very best team members compete at the NCAA Championships. Junior Spencer Bystrom represented the Buff and Blue at the Zone A Diving Championships with a score of 253.85 in the 1-meter competition. This placed him 29th among the 43 divers. Earlier this season, Bystrom had a personal best on the 1-meter and 3-meter. He also earned medals on both boards during the A-10 Championships. Dore Matic, a redshirt sophomore, had a time of 148.58 in the 200-yard butterfly. He also competed in the 100-yard butterfly, where he delivered an astounding time of 45.52 seconds. This tied him for 22nd place at the NCAA Championships, as well as equaled the A-10 record he had set just a week earlier during the Bulldog Invite Last Chance meet. It has been an amazing season for him, to say the least. Matic set individual conference records during the 50 free, 100 fly, and 200 fly this year.
In other pool news, the women's swimming and diving team ended a historic chapter of a season. After breaking several program records and bringing home their second A-10 championship in 3 seasons, senior diver Jamie Doak represented her team at the NCAA Zone A Championships. Doak traveled without her teammates, but she had the support of Spencer Bystrom, who was competing as a representative of the men's team. Both divers made their first career appearances at the NCAA Zone meet. Doak ended up placing 36th in the 1-meter dive for a score of 240.60 and 51st in the 3-meter dive with 221.50 points. Her junior season was a solid foundation to set high expectations for her upcoming senior campaign next year. Overall, the team has a lot of young talent that can contribute to their future legacy. Some learning and growth combined with the taste of victory that they have already experienced this season will serve as good factors to make an impact on the program again next year.
Women's tennis served up a win against Richmond with a scoreline of 4-1. It was hard-earned, with sophomore Stella Wiseman and senior Alexandra Vesicalio having to battle across 3 sets to help secure the win in their respective singles matches. The result lifted GW to a 5-6 record on the year and signaled the beginning of conference play. The most thrilling team victory was when GW prevailed 4-3 over East Carolina University. It saw seniors Katarina Marinkovic and Vesicalio win their singles matches. Wiseman also triumphed in hers, adding to her team-high 8 wins on the season. Junior Laura McNaughton then sealed the deal with her singles result that concluded an exciting third-set tiebreaker. GW recorded another team win against Howard University, albeit more convincingly with a score of 4-0. Mixed in with these victories were some defeats, though, including close ones against Georgetown and West Virginia. In the coming weeks, the women's team will seek to carry their momentum forward as they face conference rivals VCU and Davidson this weekend, followed by Rhode Island and UMass the following week.
The women's lacrosse team has been struggling again this season, standing at 2-8 overall and 0-2 in A10 play. Their 2 wins this season were against American and Longwood. Senior midfielder Kendall Lambert is leading the team with 6 assists and 13 points. Senior Tori Hampton is the second leading scorer with 12 points, and freshman Emily Mowbray is on the board with the second most assists at 5 total, and the third most points at 11 total. On April 23rd, the women's lacrosse team will host Senior Day and Alumni Weekend for their final home game matchup of the season against VCU. The team will be honoring 8 of their seniors, so we hope you can make it to the Vern to give your senior Colonials some buff and blue support.
The season has barely begun, and there are already plenty of personal records boasted by the men's outdoor track and field. In the 1,500 meter in the Richmond Invitational, senior Thomas Sand had a personal best of 3 minutes 57.87 seconds, and graduate student Logan Brodner recorded 4 minutes 0.97 seconds. Ryan Folks, a junior, and Pierce Capuzza, a sophomore, also posted career-high times in the 800 meter. Following their success, junior Alex Longaway earned a new best in the 5,000 meter event. Alongside these incredible feats, junior Miles Grant set a program record for GW in the high jump with a 1.95 meters. 2 more personal records were made during the Raleigh relay. Junior Pat Castellano had a time of 3 minutes 48.46 seconds in the 1,500 meter event, which was equaled by Folks. Sands earned another personal best, except this time it was in the 5,000 meter. Jack Glockenmeyer, a junior, finished shortly after Sands with a time of 14 minutes 47.48 seconds. Next up, GW heads to William & Mary for the Colonial Relay, where they aim to keep setting new personal records.
The runners have big expectations for this outdoor track season following an A10 championship for women's cross country. The outdoor track season began with the Richmond Invitational. Graduate student Catherine Nohilly set the winning tone with a record-breaking performance in the women's 1,500 meter race. Nohilly finished with a time of 4 minutes and 27.29 seconds, breaking her own school record by just under 1 second. The runners didn't set any personal records at the rally relays, but Perry Pavicic did showcase a strong performance in her women's 1K debut, finishing with a time of 35 minutes and 45.42 seconds. The team has 6 more meets before the A10 championship in early May, which gives them plenty of time to set more personal and school records and maybe even bring another A10 trophy to Foggy Bottom. You know what time it is, Buff and Blue fans. Here are Unstoppable's top 3 plays. In 3rd place, we have Catherine Nohilly's new program record of 4 minutes and 27.29 seconds in the 1,500 meter race. She beat her own personal record by just under 1 second, which is very impressive. Nohilly's athleticism, determination, and raise high spirit never fails to impress us.
Coming in at 2nd place is Kiara Frames' season-high offensive performance of 17 points against St. Bonaventure in the first round of the A10 championships. With under 2 minutes to play in the game, Frames landed a 3-point field goal to give GW their first lead in the second half. Seconds later, she extended the lead, sealing the victory at 54-49.
And in 1st place, drumroll please, Miles Grant takes the first place crown for setting a program record during the Richmond Invitational season opener. He raced high indeed, reaching 1.95 meters, which mirrored an abundance of other personal bests from GW runners at this meet.
Hello, Unstoppable fans. It's time for Hot Takes. I'm your host, Arjun Kaul, and I will be asking our two anchors a series of questions that will hopefully lead to a heated debate for your entertainment. First up, let's discuss March Madness. It's been a great month of basketball with significant upsets and a historic performance by St. Peter's University. But now we're down to the Final Four. UNC is set to face off against Duke, and Kansas is playing against Villanova. These games will be electric, but who do you guys have winning each matchup and the finals? I'll start with you, Savannah.
All right. Well, first off, between Kansas and Villanova, I got Villanova with the upset. I've always been a big Nova fan. They're a program that you've heard about for years. They are notorious for how good they are, really, and I'm rooting for them to get the upset because I always enjoy watching upsets. I always think it's so much more fun when the so-called underdog gets the win, and even though they're not really much of an underdog at the 2 seed, beating a 1 seed will still be big news, and I love that about March Madness. And they're a team with a lot of grit, which is why I think they do have the chance to beat Kansas with a player like Colin Gillespie, who's played on a sprained ankle before. They have the potential to do it. And then between Duke and UNC, I'm canceling all plans that day. My only focus is watching that game. It's going to be an iconic and historical game, and for people from North Carolina, I think it's going to be so fun. I don't know if you guys heard about Eric Church, the country singer, canceled his concert because he said he's a North Carolina guy and he needs to watch the game. And I'm not from North Carolina, and I'm just as hyped for it. And of course, I got Duke winning that and Duke going all the way. It's Coach K's last season, and he's a Polish American, so I love that representation there. And I mean, he's 75 years old. He's been with Duke for more than 40 years. His stats, his reputation, the things that he's done with that basketball program are incredible. I mean, he's like no other coach that I know of. He's so amazing. And I also think that Duke has a huge chip on their shoulder right now because UNC beat them in Coach K's final game at Duke. And so I think there's some revenge that they have there to bring him the honor that he deserved that game. So I think Duke is going to beat UNC, and they're going to go all the way.
Well, I think that's a great way to look at it right there, is the fact that this is a rematch from just a short while ago between Duke and UNC coming out on top. Of course, Coach K, final season, does not want to lose to them twice in his final year. I think it's going to be an amazing game, like you said, and I really think the winner of the entire tournament is going to be whoever wins this game. Both teams are so amazing on offense. They are producing some of the most points of any team each time they win. The over-under, I think, is 151, and I think it's definitely going to be over that. UNC is leading with its tourney possessions at over 73, I believe it is. So they're really at a high-tempo pace there, and I think that's going to be very challenging for Duke to keep up with, but I think Duke is definitely up to the challenge for it. I've been going back and forth on this matchup because, again, I think the winner of this takes it all. I think, though, for some reason, there's the confidence that UNC has, the fact that they've taken out number 1 seed Baylor on the way in overtime, UCLA, who was a fantastic Final Four team last year. And I think that the confidence of beating Duke just a little while ago is going to carry through this game, and they're going to get it done, but only by like 2 or 3 points, I think. So UNC is going to beat Duke just narrowly there. So then Kansas-Villanova, I think, again, on paper, Kansas is the team that's better. They usually score more on offense. They have more offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds. But something about this matchup, I just feel like Villanova is going to surprise here. And I think Villanova is going to kind of sneak away with this somehow and take out the last number 1 seed remaining. So then Villanova-UNC in the final, and then I think UNC will just carry the momentum through to the finish line. So I have UNC winning it all.
If we actually had Michael Jordan in the studio today, I know he'd want to go out to dinner with you. He would not want to talk to me.
I'd say those are two great takes. With Coach K, it is his final season. It could be a miraculous Cinderella season to win his 6th national championship as he walks into the sunset. And so for this first point, I'm going to have to agree with Savannah. I do have Duke winning it all against Kansas, though. I have Kansas beating Villanova because They are a more complete team. They have the better defense. But for story, experience, I do have Duke winning it. So Savannah, you get this first point. Now, just as exciting, the women's Final Four premieres April 1st. South Carolina is playing Louisville and UConn is facing against defending champs Stanford. Similarly, who do you have winning each matchup and the finals? Savannah, I'll start with you again.
I'm really interested in this UConn-Stanford game. These are two schools with a history of strong athletic programs. And I think between these two teams, I mean, first of all, it's going to be a great matchup. I think UConn is going to take it. And between South Carolina and Louisville, I'm rooting for Louisville here.
Okay.
And then I think UConn's going to take it all. So that's my take there.
Yeah, I think you've got it right, definitely, with Stanford and UConn, two number 1 seeds right there. Defending champs Stanford, they're on a 23-game win streak right now, and they have two powerhouses on offense between Jones and Brink, and they need to keep them going, I think, to really succeed against UConn, who this is their 14th consecutive Final Four appearance. I think that just speaks for itself, the experience that the team, the school, the coaching staff has that's carried through all those years. And I think that's a good feeling for them going into this. It's a familiar place. And I think with that, UConn does come out on top against Stanford. And then for Louisville and South Carolina, Louisville is definitely an underdog here, I think. But they have Van Lith, who's been scoring 20 points or more her past 4 games, which is much better than how she started the season. But the big thing here is on offense, Louisville is not the most productive. They don't usually get across that threshold of 70 points a game, whereas South Carolina is much better at not so much offense, but definitely on their defensive side, limiting points. And against a team that can't even score more than 70 consistently, that's a big red flag for me there. And I think South Carolina is probably going to prevail. It could be a little lopsided in the second half even. So then between South Carolina and UConn, I just think South Carolina will probably keep it going through to the finish line. I think they're able to shut down UConn as well and just take it through to the end. So South Carolina, I think, over UConn in the final.
I do want to say, though, to your point about South Carolina and Louisville, defense wins championships. Got to remember that. Mm-hmm. That's my motto.
Mm-hmm. And like you'd say, defense does win championships, and that is the biggest thing in this Final Four. With South Carolina, they are the strongest defensive team. Their offense sometimes has been a little lackluster. However, defense, like we said, wins championships, and I think that they will beat Stanford in the finals. And so for this point, I'm going to have to give it to Richie for South Carolina.
That's a hot take.
Mm-hmm. Transitioning into the seasonal portion of this episode, spring in DC brings along the famous cherry blossom trees. They're a popular destination that draws in many from around the country. So please, share your honest opinions on the spectacle of the cherry blossom trees. Richie, I'll start with you.
I have to say the cherry blossoms, I think, are one of the best aspects of DC, not only in the springtime, but just year-round. It attracts so many tourists alike from around the U.S., even around the world even. And it's so beautiful, so majestic, kind of walking along the National Mall, the Tidal Basin even, and it's just a nice warm spring day, nice little breeze maybe on the water, just everybody's out, everybody's happy. I think it's just so beautiful. One of my favorite memories was from freshman year, definitely walking the cherry blossoms like for the first time as a student at GW, and being able to do that with friends, with family, whoever comes to town. I think it's a defining aspect of DC, and a big reason why springtime in DC is my favorite time of year being a GW student.
Savannah?
Well, I do agree that there's certainly an appeal to the cherry blossoms. There's no lying that they are beautiful, and it is very majestic walking through the Tidal Basin, and it's something that attracts millions of tourists to DC, specifically around this time of year for the cherry blossoms. But I think that it's definitely overrated in my opinion. First of all, they're so short-lived. They're beautiful, but so short-lived, and you miss them by a couple days. Peak bloom only lasts so long. So you only have that really gorgeous and majestic look for a couple of days before they're gone in less than a week. And not to mention the weather is a hit or miss. I feel like we've had 4 different seasons in the last week here in DC alone. And last weekend, I felt personally victimized by the cherry blossoms because my parents drove all the way down from New Jersey, and it was awful. The weather was terrible. The wind was so high and it was freezing cold. And I saw tourists who were dressed in like these really pretty sundresses and flip-flops, and they were freezing cold. I'm sure people had to stop by M Street or something to buy a jacket because it was literally freezing. And not to mention, parking is a disaster. You cannot find any type of parking near the tidal basin. My dad found a spot and then realized that it was actually a row of cars with parking tickets along the side of the street. And so it does look beautiful, and it is certainly an experience, but when you've been around DC for so long, I've probably been seeing them for the last decade or so, because my sister went to GW as well. And so after a while, it just gets old, you get used to it. For a one-time experience, I think it's definitely worth coming down to DC, but after that, there are so many other places to go to see cherry blossoms. The New York Botanical Garden has a 50-acre forest of cherry blossoms. The Roosevelt Island, Central Park, and I know you're gonna like this answer because you're from New York.
Yes.
But my point is, there are so many other places to see them. Why come all the way here when the weather is not gonna be good?
I think it's the nation's capital. It's exciting to just be around all the monuments, the museums, and you're just able to kind of walk around such big open green spaces with everybody. I agree, the traffic, the tourists, they can be overwhelming and annoying, but the spectacle itself of the cherry blossoms is exciting, it's beautiful, and I think for me that makes it one of the defining aspects of being in DC, especially in spring.
Well, Manhattan is my capital.
Well, Richie, I totally acknowledge, your wonderful experience freshman year going with your friends. However, I am a cynic, and I view the cherry blossoms to be very mid. They come and go very quickly, just like every GW basketball player before they enter the transfer portal. The cherry blossoms cause so much pollution, like you said, the traffic.
Allergies.
There's so many people, allergies, and being from New York, there is so much more opportunity to see cherry blossoms or just nature, except for a strip alongside a mossy, bird poop infested tidal basin. So I have to give this point to Savannah, and you finally won a hot take segment with me as host. Not with me. Not with me.
See, that's how we know this is rigged.
So thank you guys for tuning into Hot Takes. It's been a wonderful episode.
That's all the GW sports updates and April Fool's jokes that we have for you today. If you want to stay in the know, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with the handles below so you can stay up to date with all of our exclusive GW sports content.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. As always,
Raise high.